If you enjoy the subject matter of these podcasts, then you would definitely enjoy any of the 3 Patreon discussion groups that are available. You can read about these groups by going to theinfinitesparkofbeing.com and clicking the participate button. We also offer a free meditation group every other Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. To learn exact dates, check any of the Infinite Spark of Being socials. There should be a link tree with the information in the profile. This is a community of everyday people who are interested in living with a deeper understanding of spiritual practice and how it can be applied in a practical sense to our everyday lives. So join us. Welcome to the Infinite Spark of Being podcast. My name is Keith Welsh, and in this episode, we are going to continue down the path of the divine mind, superconscious mind, higher self, how to integrate it, how to get closer to it, how to pull more of those divinely good ideas into our life, how to live closer to that aspect as opposed to the conscious mind, the carnal mind, the scared small self. How to live less in the scared egoic mind and more in the freedom of the divine mind. Okay, so the way a lot of these episodes have been going is they kind of follow the Patreon groups. So the first Wednesday, we'll introduce an idea, right? The second Wednesday, we discuss that idea through the lens of some sort of spiritual text. Right now, it's the Bhagavad Gita. So, first Wednesday, here's what superconscious mind is. This is what the divine mind is. This is what we're referring to. And then the second Wednesday is, hey, let's look at this idea of the divine mind, the superconscious mind, through the lens of the Bhagavad Gita. What is Krishna telling us about that? And then this third Wednesday, which will be this Wednesday coming up, we discuss the more mystical or esoteric end of the idea. Aspect, rather, not the end of the idea, but the aspect of the idea. So, the divine mind, the superconscious mind, this leads me to speaking a little less diplomatically about the concept of God. So I'm just going to say God. I'm not going to say whatever the word is that you use. And ultimately, that's what we're doing, but just for the ease of the conversation. Those of you that take really strong issue with the use of the word God, I would advise you to stop being so lazy. And I say that because I see, and not that you're an atheist or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's easy to be agnostic. It's easy to be atheistic. It's easier. Science makes things nice and clean and orderly and linear, and science becomes disrupted when the natural non-linearity of the human existence takes hold and everybody freaks out. Which is why quantum physics is so such a drag, because it really upends things, right? Action at a spooky distance, that's confusing. Dimensions, that's confusing. Anyway, so my relationship with God it's been an adventure. So the way these texts are written, or the way they can be read, rather, let's say that you can read them literally. As a child and into my late teens, early 20s, the Bible, the Christian Bible, was understood as a literal book. They would say literal translation, but I don't think that is accurate. You can have the New International Version, the International Version, the King James Version, the whatever version. Those are different translations, but the stories are basically the same. It's not like names get switched around and the end is different. Same thing with the Bhagavad Gita. I right now am running 3 different quote unquote translations, right? Well, they are translations, but the story is essentially the same. The commentary might be different. The allegorical understanding of the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita might be different. But nonetheless, it was a very literal understanding. So I like to say literal understanding of the Bible, which led me to, when we understand the Bible, for instance, we try to understand it through its literal, to understand it literally, we might benefit from it. We might have some great things happen. Things might start to shape up, but that path is very difficult to maintain because, I don't know, drinking camel milk is difficult. I don't know, but it's difficult to maintain that. Leaving the church and then associating with ISKCON, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, it's also a pretty literal understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. Which again, when we understand these things literally, we read the Srimad Bhagavatam and understand things literally, it all gets, again, difficult to maintain. Which is why these groups, the members wane. It's difficult. This is what leads people to say things like, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Right? Because the religiosity of these things tends to be so literal that it's very difficult to keep in our lives, to maintain in our lives. So it's hard, Sorry, I had to wave. I make a habit of waving at the people that have like the slow or stop signs when there's road work going on. I feel like that job is a drag, man. Anyway, so I don't know if the wave does anything, if it's like how helpful I'm being, but I don't know. Hey man, what's up? I dig it. It's hot. So again, the literal understanding might bring you closer, might have some benefit, but it's going to be difficult to maintain. I believe that with that literal understanding comes some disappointment. You become disappointed in your own actions, disappointed in the world. And why isn't the world behaving in accordance with these literal whatever? But once, and that was my life for a long time. Then I got some different teachers, read some different things, and was introduced to an allegorical understanding of these books. What was fascinating is in the allegory, Krishna is within. The allegory within the Gita is that it is more your inner dialogue. Krishna is you, Arjuna is you. Arjuna represents the conscious mind or the scared small self, the ego. And then Krishna represents the divine mind, the superconscious mind, the higher self. The Bible, Jesus represents your highest potential, the divine mind. The devil would represent, the scared small self. In the Bhagavad Gita, at the beginning, when they mention Bhishma and Drona, these are representations of you going to war with the old self. Same thing with the Bible. Pontius Pilate, Judas Iscariot, all represent aspects of yourself. What I found interesting and probably ironic, I hate using that word because I'm not entirely sure what it means, but every time somebody points out irony, it's like that. But to internalize God, to deepen my understanding of the allegory that I am God, deepened my attraction and understanding of an external God. And I know that doesn't make sense. It deepened my connection to God. It deepened my connection, love, affection for this externalized idea of Krishna or God. And that's very interesting because what gets said a lot of times, and I mentioned this probably the last episode, where it's like you say something and they bring up, and someone would bring up the most extreme, egregious example. where someone would say, well, if I thought I was God, I'd try to fly and I'd get as high as I wanted, I'd drink I'd steal and murder, and that's what I would do if I thought I was God. Well, that's very interesting, you fucking psycho. Now we all know to keep an eye on you. So, yeah, maybe an internalized version of God's not for you because you're clearly a serial killer. What I found was that by internalizing my connection to God and understanding, as Krishna said, you're all my part and parcels, the wisest sages understand me to be their own divine self. If you believe that you would benefit from working with me one-on-one on grief and loss, anxiety, or ruminating thinking, then shoot me an email or direct message. Or if you're interested in learning about meditation and how it can transform your reality and change your life, then again, please reach out through email or direct message. Thank you. Deepened my connection to the externalized concept of God. And the black and white thinking would be like, well, is it in you or is it not in you? Like, what is it? It's both. It's both. And this gets into kind of a chaos magic idea where you use a concept in the way that it's most beneficial to you. Buddha understood this in his teachings where, it's not contradictory. It's just that you need different things at different times. The medicine Buddha practice is one of those things where you are in the visualizations, you understand that you are the Buddha, the medicine Buddha. And that in this visualized exchange between you and the medicine Buddha, you understand that that's you. And it's not a mirror, it's that it is you. But then I found myself supplicating to, I don't know if I used that word right, I think I did, praying to the medicine Buddha as an externalized thing and benefiting from it. That's what's interesting. That, as you do that, as well as I did that, as I deepened my internal connection to the thing that I inevitably am, that I am inextricably connected to that fountainhead, that wellspring, that thing that is the source of all that we refer to as God, as Krishna, Vishnu, Rama, that as I deepen that, my love for them externally became greater, or my love for it externally became greater. And that allowed me to listen to the divine mind, to my superconscious mind, more intently. And I found it easier to follow my own advice. Right? That when the divine mind spoke, and it gave me that inspired idea, that it allowed me to ignore the conscious mind, the scared small self, the egoic, fearful, biological imperative of the meat suit. It allowed me to ignore that and to trust in something that was much more deeper. And that's been the benefit of it. And it has allowed me to love Krishna as Krishna. So what it did is it brought me back to the externalized thing, but I take it and use it as needed. Sometimes I am God, and sometimes I am talking to something outside of me. It's Hanuman in the Ramayana. Monkey, who am I to you? Well, when I forget who I am your servant. When I remember who I am you. And there's a really great piece of the Ramayana where Hanuman is given these bangles that Ram's name is scratched inside of him. And he smashes them into pieces. He's chewing on it and biting it and breaking it and looking inside of it. And everyone's like, what are you doing, you crazy monkey? And he's like, this is hollow, it's empty. Ram isn't in here, God isn't in here. And he ends up clawing open his own chest, peels his outer layer open. You know, if you ever see the picture of Hanuman and he's pulling his chest open and it shows Ram and Sita inside of his chest, he peels himself open to show that the name Ram is etched on his bones, that it's in his very bones. Ram, Ram, Ram. So while Hanuman serves Ram, serves God, serves Vishnu, serves God to the best of his ability, faithfully and without question, he also is inextricably connected to Ram. That he is, like they would say, he was so close to Ram that he was the breath of Ram. That they even said that I am you. When I understand myself, I am you. That's very interesting. That we run into that thing where, which is it? Well, it's both. It's both, and it depends on the day. And that is confusing for us Western folks, because, you know, regardless of having not, and there's people in my life that were never raised with an idea of God. They weren't raised with any religion, nothing. But they still have this Judeo-Christian idea of the concept. And in fact, the most vehement atheist, you know, on planet Earth, in North America rather, still has Judeo-Christian punishment reward concepts, the way they handle their own science. They just became evangelical about science. They're scientific evangelical. You know, it's just, it's all the same thing. But if you want to draw closer to God, listen to the divine mind. Listen to the superconscious mind. And take its advice. Do its thing. When you have an inspired thought, act on it. Take some step. Do something. Right? And when you do that, you're showing it, and you're showing it's an act of good faith to God. I'm listening. You're letting the divine mind know that you're listening. And then when you do that, when you let the superconscious mind know that you're listening by acting on it, you are then impressing that into the subconscious, which is then allowing the conscious mind to follow suit. And so your thoughts become different because the subconscious becomes different, because now you're listening to the superconscious. This is how we begin to transform things. So we learn to observe that. We observe the mind. Notice it. That conscious mind, that carnal mind, that scared small self seems to have a very loud voice. It's always talking. And the things that it says are a really good indication as to how your operating system, how your subconscious mind is working, how your subconscious sees the world, how it reveals the world to you, and in turn allows the conscious mind's crazy thoughts to manifest. Well, by learning to observe the conscious mind, we start to understand the subconscious. And when we begin to do that, we can engage in metacognition. We can begin to reshape the conscious mind by listening to the superconscious. So we've now observed the mind, shaped our thoughts, and that in turn transforms our reality. It transforms the entire game. Doesn't mean that bad things don't happen. It doesn't mean that challenges don't arise. It doesn't mean that old age, sickness, and death don't come. It doesn't mean that the world is now a permanent fixated thing. No, it means that that's all still there. Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The suffering changes when we learn to relate to the world differently, when we learn to relate to the inevitability of things in a different way. That's when things start to change. So, I love you. I love you. I love you. I think we're going to be changing the meditation group to every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Got to do a little more thinking on that. If that changes, then the ads at the end of this or the beginning will change. Okay. I love you. I love you. I love you. I know this helped some of you. I'm confident. Bye. If you enjoy this content and would like to support the ongoing creation of this content, go to the website, theinfinitesparkofbeing.com, and explore the many ways to do that, such as the shop button, which takes you to the bookstore, as well as the apparel store. Also, click the about button, read a little bit about me, see what I have to offer you. And don't forget to check out the Patreon tiers if you'd like to join a spiritual community of everyday people with not so everyday interests. Go ahead and check out the participate button on that website. Also, do not forget, we now have a free meditation group every other Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you want to know more about that, check out any of the Infinite Spark of Being social media pages. There's a link tree there with a button. So see you then.